guys, and welcome to TalkBox with Oktavists. I'm your host, Sander Mayan, and today we have Mr. Please introduce yourself.
I'm Jason Thoms, and I've been singing kind of octavist, low bass stuff in professional choirs for about the last 7 or 8 years around the country.
Wow. This man is the powerhouse that is always with Glen Miller, almost all the time. And you might think, oh, it's always Glen Miller. No.
Well, Glenn and I have done a lot of stuff in the last few years, especially. It's always nice to sing with Glenn. And whenever you're not singing with Glenn, you know that you're not singing with Glenn because he's a rare voice, and there's not really any other voice like his in the American choral, pro choral world, except maybe a couple of the guys who do like Chanticleer, but you don't usually see those guys.
So, Mr. Thoms, so what is it like to sing as an octavist in some of the world's most prestigious choirs?
Well, it's kind of a neat opportunity. One of the things you have to kind of figure out is, what does each choir want of you? That's the hard part about doing professional choir singing generally, is you can't just sing the way you want to. You really have to sing the way that the director is really wanting. And there's a lot of nuance in that. In fact, I didn't even really ever sing a lot of low bass until one of the conductors, Joshua Haberman of the Santa Fe Desert Chorale, actually said, "I want you to sing bass 3 on the Rachmaninoff." And I was like, I've never sung that low before. I always thought it was a baritone. And so I can't remember how many years, 8 years ago, something like that. It was the first time I sang a Rachmaninoff, and I started practicing it, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I guess I do have B flats. And so from there, everything changed. I started selling myself as a low bass instead of a baritone, and suddenly got a lot more jobs.
Wow. So as we know, an octavist is a role in a choir, not really a vocal class. Would you consider yourself a basso profundo by opera standards?
No, I consider myself a bass baritone. But I mean, I have low notes. This is the thing it's tricky is how you sell yourself and how you get jobs is by what people want, what people need. And so, a lot of choirs recently, especially in the last, I think, what was it, last year, I had 8 different Russian Orthodox gigs where I was doing, octavist type things in all of those 8 different professional gigs. And none of them wanted me to sing baritone. But the interesting part is, at my church choir where I sing, the guy only wants me to sing baritone. Every time I'm like, you want me to sing the low part? He's like, oh no, it goes kind of low. And he has no idea that I do all this octavism stuff. So I was a baritone at church, and the guy wouldn't even let me sing the low notes. So
wow.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Oh my goodness, I know the struggle. At my family, I have to sing tenor too, because I have a whole bunch of low basses in my family, and they're like, "Oh, Xander, your register is mid baritone, high baritone. Sing the tenor part. That's where you belong."
Right. Well, when we often sing with my family, all sings together. My son's a bass baritone, and my daughter is a soprano, and my wife sang alto a lot. And so I always had to sing tenor when we did those kind of things, Christmas caroling or singing things at church. If we were going to do an ensemble, I'm always the tenor. So.
Yeah, I know the struggle. So the All-Night Vigil is one of the most sacred and beautiful pieces of Russian Orthodox music. Is there a mindset you have before you perform the piece?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's changed over time. I think this last year I did my 25th performance of the All-Night Vigil with, I think, the 14th different ensemble I've worked with, professional ensemble on it. So it's something now that is just kind of something I just do and ready for. I can't imagine what it's like for Glen Miller, but the thing that's amazing is when I've sung with Glen, every single time we sing together on these things, he acts as if it's almost the first time he's ever sung All-Night Vigil. So he really wants to find out what the director wants of him, And so he doesn't just sing it by memory. He could put the music down and just sing it by memory, but he's constantly marking his score and things like that. So that's one of the things I've kind of learned from being around someone like Glen, who could go on automatic pilot anytime he wanted, but you always have to do something new. You always have to imagine. So the last time I did the All-Night Vigil, I had actually crossed out all the transliteration from the Russian or the Cyrillic, and I actually started reading the Cyrillic. So I've been teaching myself Cyrillic over the last year or so that I can just read straight out of the Cyrillic instead of reading transliterations. And so,
wow.
Every time I do the Rachmaninoff, I try to find something new to do. So when I was first learning it, obviously it's to get comfortable with the notes and the range and things like that. But since then, more and more, I don't think I could do it completely by memory, but I could do a lot of it by memory. But putting a new challenge on it each time so that it stays fresh, I think is an important part. But it's a great piece. It's probably, I consider it probably the greatest a cappella long, depending who the conductor is, 65 to 75 minutes long, depending on the tempos. So it's such a great piece.
Yeah, I hope to sing it one day as well. Of course, because of coronavirus, that might not happen for, this school year. But
yeah, probably not. Maybe not this year, but it's such a great piece. It's something that lasts a long time. I have a neat story about the Rachmaninoff Vespers or All-Night Vigil. I was singing it in New York City here with the St. Ignatius Choir, and there was 60 voices, all professional. And they had 8 bass threes. And we worked for, however many days on the or on the rehearsals and everything. And the dress rehearsal, Glen flies in, and at the end of the 5th movement, which goes down to the low B flat, we're all 9 of us now are singing it, and all the ladies turn around and look at Glen and clap, and we were all like, "What about us?" the other 8 of us were like, "What's going on here? We've been working at this all week." So there's something that's neat about Glen, but this is such a there's so many guys that I sing with all the time.
Yeah.
Who make their living as maybe call ourselves fake octavists in some ways, because there's really only like 3 or 4 really great professional octavists, but I can fake pretty well with the best. And I've had to do a number of Rachmaninoffs where I was the only octavist, and people flew me in to join their choir, and no one else in their choir could really sing below like a D. And so I was all by myself on those B flats and other C's and things like that down there.
Wow, that's really
that's
impressive.
Scary. That's scary when that happens.
So one thing that I've noticed over the years, over the months actually, is I'm thinking that I'm older than I already am, is that a lot of octavists actually speak in a baritone manner. I take into account Alexis Lukianov, Yuri Wichnikov, Sergei Kojitev, and you as well, Mr. Jason Thoms. Is there a reason why you octavists tend to speak in a higher register rather than where your chest range usually sits?
Well, I think it's healthier to speak in a higher voice. And ultimately, speaking and always speaking in your chest voice all the time can be damaging to your vocal cords. So one of the things that I learned when I was at St. Olaf as an undergrad was to be able to speak in a place that keeps your voice healthy all the time. One of the most important parts about being able to sing anything, but I find this especially about octavists, is to be able to sing healthily and correctly. And if you find yourself constantly coughing or clearing your throat and all this stuff while you're trying to do octavist stuff, you're really not singing it in the most healthy way. So things that I think you would notice though is if you talk to myself or any of these any folks who are singing professional octavists and they've been in a week of rehearsals. This most recent recording that came out with Patram, which Glen and Elias and Alex and I were the low basses for, we were singing for an entire week in that voice. And one of the things that I've learned over time is I have to actually start warming down anytime I know a Rachmaninoff or things like that are coming up. So every day, instead of warming up my voice, I try to just warm as low as I can, keeping it steady, so that when I get into singing the octave stuff, I'm prepared. What you'll notice is my voice will sound lower. I'll be speaking lower in my voice in that week because I'm spending all of my time thinking lower and to just get in that part. I mean, I think there's a bit of training in there. One week I actually was doing a Rachmaninoff. I was in New York. I was doing a Rachmaninoff that week, and I was doing another piece where I was a baritone, and it was not a good week. That was not a week that worked well because my voice never had the opportunity to settle on the lower side. So I pretty much, if I'm going to do octavist stuff, I have to focus only in doing octavist stuff that week so that my voice is really settled into that lower part. And it's neat. You know, the more and more you hear some of these people speaking, when they're in the active part of singing, their voices get quite low. And it's kind of funny. Suddenly you hear this rumble and it's someone speaking because they've been living down there.
So you talked about it yourself. There was a new album that came out recently where you, Alexis Lukianov, Elias Doublestein, if I'm not mistaken, and Glen Miller were a part of that.
Yeah.
Could you tell us more about that album for us?
Well, that was a Patron recording with Peter as the director, and it was just all Russian music, and that was quite a fun week because it was just low. I mean, singing the Rachmaninoff is great fun. I think there's 13 low B flats, but that week just probably would have broken any records for anybody for the amount of low notes we were singing. I can't remember which piece it was. One of the pieces we were singing, we sang low C's, the bass threes sang low C's pretty much on a drone the entire piece. And the piece was about 3 minutes long. And we rehearsed and then recorded that piece for about an hour. So we were just singing low C's for about an hour straight. And you, by that point, your voice is in that, you're kind of locked into that land. But there was lots of G flats, there was lots of G's in that recording process. And the more you do it, the better you are at being able to get to those lower notes with a beautiful core that fits well. So that was a neat recording. But I've done a couple other recordings recently too with St. Tikhon's. We recorded Benedict's new liturgy last year. And there was a number of G flats in there too, but I was also the baritone soloist in that. I was a deacon soloist. So to be able to sing more of the deacon-y solo stuff as well as then come back and join the bass threes and that. So
So there's a rumor flying around about the song in that album for Patron in Beneath Thy Compassion. That Alexis Lukianov would sometimes drop down to an E1 while you guys sang the E2. Is that true?
Well, yeah, it's hard to tell sometimes. You know, you record it so many times. This is the part when you do recordings, is you record it. Every once in a while, somebody's going to drop down, and you never know which one of those recordings actually hits it. So, a lot of those pieces, we might have recorded them 6-7 times, and we might have started getting slap happy in the recording process, and suddenly there's lots of lows added in. So yeah, I mean, it's fun to sing with people who have really lived in the Russian Orthodox tradition, because Benedict, Peter, a lot of these guys who you're working with, they'll just glance over at you and just go like that, and suddenly you're having to take everything down an octave. And, so you just have to be ready, and you get used to it. You get used to it because you're like, I know an octave is coming up, even though it's not written in the score. And but it's fun when you see it and you just see that coming in your face, and then you just know it's time to go. So
yeah, at my college, there were moments where there were pieces where I wanted to drop the octave, and I would, but my fellow bass two, or because I would be the bass three, but I would sing bass two, he'd say, Sander, That's the wrong moment. Are there moments where it's wrong to drop the octave? I know there's a lot of people who say always drop the octave. I know there
Yeah.
are moments where it's wrong to drop the octaves. Could you give an example of, or just the reason why that would be a bad example of to do that?
Well, I mean, I think there are definitely times you want to drop the octave. And when you want to drop the octave, you want to do it because it's something special, right? If you do it all the time, it's not special, right? You know, there's a lot of things when it comes to music. When you're conducting or anything like that, if you're constantly moving your body back and forth all the time, then it doesn't mean anything. So if someone's kind of conducting kind of still, but then they move their body, then you know, oh wait, something's happening. Same thing happens with dropping the octave. If you only sing down the octave all the time, it gets kind of boring and just kind of the bass part, you know, maybe loses some integrity because everybody can sing low all the time. Well, I mean, especially if you had to do that, you know, for a 40-minute rehearsal or something. I think cadences are really important. Repetition of something. So if you're singing a phrase or you're singing a refrain and you sing it one time up the octave, then the next time you would sing it down the octave, right? And then there's some points where I think it's important, especially if I do a lot of singing in Orthodox liturgy also with St. Tikhon's, and you know you'll see that what the text is, and the text has been building and building, and you get to say the doxology or something within a text. Suddenly you're like, I want to take that down the octave because that works, you know. And then the other side of it is to watch what's happening on the other side of the choir, the sopranos and things like that. If you get to a big cadence and the sopranos are just kind of staying in the middle of their range, then probably the basses are going to stay in the middle of their range. But if the sopranos are going to go way up, then why not stabilize that sound with a good, strong, low bass sound? So I often will actually be looking at the other parts as I'm going along to see what if my low octaves will actually supplement what's going on in the rest of the choir. So, and then often I'll talk with the director and say, hey, I really feel like it should go down an octave here, and sometimes no, don't do that, and sometimes like, yeah, definitely you have to, you know. So you know, so it's great. It really, the feeling that you get, like I need to go down the octave right now, is often a good feeling. You should probably follow that one, but I just think too much, it just gets kind of it loses its importance. You really want to point out how awesome you are and how awesome that sound is, and if it happens all the time, people get used to it. But if you use it at the magic moments, then suddenly it's something a little different.
Wow. So you're also the director of choral studies at Concordia College, New York. Now, we discussed that. This is a great segue. What sound are you looking for in your different sections? You know, your sopranos, altos, tenors, basses. Is there a certain, you know, if you want warmth for the sopranos, are you looking for more tight tone for the sopranos? Because I know people who watch this are more than just octavist fans. You know, they want to know more about choral stuff in general. So could you give us an example of what you want in each vocal class in your choir?
Well, I think one of the things I've learned from, as I mentioned earlier, from being in doing a lot of professional choirs, is there isn't one sound. It's a sound. Every sound, you have to figure out what that sound is for that piece. So, you know, if I'm singing early American stuff, it might be a bright and more strident sound. If I'm singing a Renaissance motet, it's got to be maybe more straight tone and quieter. But the number one thing that I think, and this comes probably from my experience at St. Olaf, but I've also experienced this in my singing, especially in the Orthodox Church and stuff, is I like this idea, all right, the pyramid. So you need to have, the sopranos have maybe the least sound, and then the altos have a bit more, because you need this kind of pyramid of sound in the women's voices, and then you kind of repeat that pyramid in the tenors. You don't necessarily need more tenor sound than alto sound. You know, the sopranos and tenors, they tend to sing with a kind of a bright, pingy sound most of the time, and that's going to cut through. But you have to supplement that with the maybe a little bit more volume in the lower voices, And one of the things that gets hard is if we sing too dark and woofy in the basses, it means we need more people. We can't. There's no way to sing dark and woofy and out sing a tenor. It's not possible. So the only thing you can do as a baritone or bass to do that is brighten your sound to be a little bit more tenory to match with that. So I think that's a really important part, is to just think of this. You really want the stability of the low notes to keep the sound and the chords stable. And then the sound that you make depends on the music. So this last year, I was working at a church, and about half the singers I was working with were professionals. A number of them had actually sung at the Met. One guy was actually singing at the Met Opera as a soloist while he was singing at my church and at the same time. And then the other half were volunteers. And every piece we did, we would talk about what is the sound we're going to use for this song. What am I expecting out of our sound here? And so that's really what I expect of myself as a bass. I want to know what sound am I supposed to be singing and then make that sound. And that's what I want for my choir. I expect them to, they have to be flexible. You have to be flexible, professional musician. Otherwise, it's just the same thing all the time. Again, anytime you just do the same thing all the time, it loses its excitement or its uniqueness.
I see. Yes. Right now, I'm the only bass 3 in my choir, so I don't know how to blend with other octavists quite yet. So do you have anything like you could give me tips about how to like blend with, like if you were with like Elias or Glenn? You know, do you blend to a certain voice in the choir, or do you guys just kind of mold into one voice, into one man?
Yeah, I think when it comes to any professional ensemble type of thing, but even when I'm working with amateurs and stuff, you kind of have to get a sense of who is maybe the lead voice in that section. You know, if Glenn is there, it's Glenn, right? If Glenn isn't there, then sometimes there's actually a discussion. You know, if there's sometimes when I'm in an ensemble, I know that one of the other bass 3s is a really good friend of the director. And so I tend to allow that person's voice to be the color or the main color of what we're doing. And I try to get into what his sound is, right?
Yeah.
But if someone's bringing me in to be an octavist, and, you know, then I'm just going to sing it the way that fits my voice best. If they want, I'll often go up to them and say, is that the way I'm singing it, is that the way you like it? And I don't know that I've almost ever had somebody say, no, that was horrible. Yeah, that's great. I'm so glad I hired you. You know, so it's a tricky part. But what you have to do is you just have to sometimes you have to defer yourself to someone else. And sometimes you're going to be the color voice. But the thing is, as you do this more and more, I'm often singing with many of the same low basses, and so I know their voices pretty well. You know, the reason I just sang at Rachmaninoff in Atlanta in September. I got that job. I haven't auditioned for a job in 6 years. I get that job because somebody who was in another professional choir says, "Oh, we need a bass 3. You should bring Jason in." You know, so. It's really we always are singing with the same people, and so you get used to it. And then when you add a new voice in, you really want to try to figure out what they can offer. And the other part that I think is important is not every one of my notes is a great note. You know, especially low. I have really good B flats, but my B natural is not as good as my C is. My B natural is not quite as good. My B flat's good. My A flat is pretty good. My A natural is not quite as good. But this person next to me might be better at B naturals and A's, you know. And so we're often tag teaming a bit, trying to figure out, you know, to create the best sound. We kind of have to. I have to know where my deficiencies lie. I know I can't sing as loud on an E natural. The natural notes tend to be where I don't have quite as much resonance as the flat note. E flat, D flat, B flat, A flat. Those are notes that fit well, but the naturals they don't fit quite as well in my voice.
I see.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's not like they don't work, but I mean, they don't have the same consistency that I like to hear, you know.
Yeah. So I'm hoping to hear back from them soon. You know, I was told by the CEO that I'm on their radar for Oktavists, which is cool. You know, I would love to sing with you guys, but coronavirus and stuff like that. It's getting in the way of stuff.
Well, I mean, it's going to be a tough. I would say the next, all the way until we get through 2021. I think is going to be tough. I mean, I'm about to move to North Dakota to be the choir director up there, and the expectation that I've heard from the college there is I'm going to actually have in-person choir rehearsals.
Oh, really?
Because they don't have as much coronavirus up there, but we're still going to do it socially distanced, and I'm going to require everyone to wear masks. But it's a very different expectation than in New York, where no one's going to be singing in choirs, or anyone's really going to be singing in choir probably for another year. So it's going to be tricky to figure out what's going to happen next, and we just have to make sure we stay healthy, because one of the most important parts about coronavirus is the way it can affect our lungs. So even if we're an asymptomatic carrier and we don't get sick from it, a lot of the research recently has been showing that it can do permanent damage to your lungs. And if you can't breathe well, you can't sing well. So we have to watch it, because we could get complacent with coronavirus, not sing with masks, not sing distanced from each other. And even if we are asymptomatic, it could really create problems. And I'm actually hearing some folks that I hear them singing right now. I could hear, it almost sounds like they're having their lungs are kind of crackling and popping while they're singing, their voice. And it makes me think, I wonder if they're asymptomatic, because just the way you breathe and you sing, I mean, breathing is so vitally important. So, and the other thing that really stood out to me is when coronavirus was starting, is when I'm singing a lot of octavist stuff, like B flats and stuff, even when I'm just singing like this with no mask on or anything, my glasses will often fog up at a B flat because of the humidity coming out of my mouth that just comes up onto my glasses. So if that happens when I'm singing a B flat all the time, and my glasses literally fog up, how much of those particles are actually going in the air around me? And I think it's really something important. So yes, I want to sing. I want to be around other people. I can't wait to work with students and conduct and work with them. But we have to be aware that this is a point in our time where we may just have to take a little bit more of a break. It's going to come back. Some old lady saw me in the store, and I have this great shirt that says 2020 sucks. And, I wear it around anytime I can. And I have my mask on and stuff. And this lady said, "Oh, are we ever going to get our masks off?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we sure are, in about a year and a half." And that's not what I wanted to hear. So, it's important. It really is. I think there's a way we can take coronavirus and just be like, "Oh, who cares?" It's if I get sick, I get sick. But if you get sick, it could damage what you could do as a singer. Important.
Yeah. So after a great performance, sometimes, it's just you might be hungry or you might be thirsty. Is there a favorite drink or food you have after a really solid performance?
I think that all depends on who you're with. Depending on the choir, many choirs like to go out and just go have some beers or something afterwards, and I think that's always a lot of fun. On a normal day though, I do a lot of these performing. There's been a number of years where I've conducted my choir in 50 plus performances and sung in 50 plus performances myself as a soloist. Often I like to just have a glass of water and go to sleep. So, I think it all depends on, where you're at, what time of day you're doing stuff. I mean, I think, the one hard thing, just like coronavirus, you have to watch is the amount of alcohol you drink dries out the voice. So sometimes when I'm singing a lot of low bass, one of the things I've found is that actually I get a lot of phlegm when I'm singing a lot of low bass. And I can feel phlegm on my vocal cords and stuff. And sometimes then I might actually have, some vodka or kind of harder liquor just to help dry things out a little bit, but not a lot of that. I think, you know, anytime you do something all the time to make something else work, it's a problem. So if you're constantly drinking to keep your voice dry, then you're probably doing something wrong somewhere else. So that's great. And the other thing I would do is, the worst mistake I ever made in doing octavist and eating was when I was down in Santa Fe with Santa Fe Desert Chorale. We were in Albuquerque to do a Rachmaninoff. This was, I think, my first Rachmaninoff that and before, they have some great barbecue down in Albuquerque. And so I got down there early and I just splurged on this amazing barbecue. And every time I sang a low B flat, all I could feel was like barbecue, like trying to come up. And it was terrible. I was like, I could, the smoke and the barbecue spices and everything. Every time I was like singing a low B flat, I was just like, oh man. And so I would strongly suggest no barbecue before singing low B flats.
Okay, I'll take that in mind. So now we're going to wrap up the interview with the process that the fans love the most. And that is, lastly, Mr. Thoms, what is your lowest note that you can do for us right now?
Oh boy, I don't know. That's a good question. Well, first I'll say that everything has changed over time. So every year I do a gig, I can sing lower and lower. So this last gig I did, we had a bunch of G flats, and so I was getting pretty good at a G flat, which was nice. But I haven't been singing very much in the last 4 months, so I don't know. I think if I were to do something right now, the fans would be like, "Why are you trying to make that sound down there?" One of the things I actually would have a question for some of our octavist fans too is, you know, I've sung all this octavist stuff, but I've never ever defined how my voice does it. I tend to call it's a lot of vocal fry. It's a vocal fry that then I just add. And anytime I sing low notes when I'm talking with friends, I'm like, it's all fake. Everything down there is fake. Nothing's real. And it would be interesting to get a kind of a sense of what and how that works. But why don't let's see. It's scary to do this in front of people, but let me get a B flat here. Oops, of course I'm going to get this app opening and trying to sell me a game. But let me, let's see here. My phone for some reason not making a B flat sound. 1 second. Oh, let's see. Hold on, let me go get a quick B flat and then I'll sing the Rachmaninoff scale for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Those perfect pitch guys. There's a lot of these guys out there that have perfect pitch, so I'm not that guy. So we'll go with that. It's a B flat. We'll try. I haven't done it. I haven't sung it. It's hard. Everyone's going to be laughing at this point. So, no, it really takes, for me, it takes about just spending the time digging into that. Today I've actually been recording another virtual choir thing that I put together, and there's been a lot of tenor stuff in that. So my voice is lying a little higher today.
Oh, no, I understand.
Yeah. No, but you know, I enjoy the octavist page when you see folks singing down the low Fs and Es and Ds. You don't ever get to do that very much in a choir setting a lot, but it's fun to see, and I'm glad to be on the page and see this and share the videos that I can share and some of the recordings. So it's good to be there.
Yeah. All right. So thanks guys for watching, and hope to see you soon.